If you are a PA, NP, pharmacist, physician, and you're not investing right now, or your version of investing looks like 4% in a 401k, this episode will literally be worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to you. I became a millionaire at 31 as a PA, not because I sold a business or inherited a bunch of money, but because I understood one simple thing. Time is the most powerful wealth-building tool that you have. And every single year that you delay investing, you are quite literally setting money on fire. We are going to talk today about why starting now matters actually more than how much you invest, the real math behind delayed investing, why healthcare professionals in particular are at risk with waiting, and how to fix it now. Here's the tricky part. Delaying investing as a medical professional feels very reasonable for a lot of reasons. We hear things like, I don't have time to worry about it right now. I'm working a lot of hours. Or I need to deal with my student loans first. I want to buy a house. My car needs replaced. I have a wedding coming up. We have a baby on the way. All of those things are reasonable, practical things to say in response to the question of why haven't you built consistent investing systems yet? Here's the rub. When most people say that, they don't have an understanding of the opportunity cost that comes with the statement. Meaning, they might know, hey, there's going to be some downstream effects of me waiting to get this process started. But what they haven't done is put math to those downstream effects and then really thought through, what is that going to look like for me in my future budget if I make this call right now? Most of us already delayed investing by at least 6 years, if not more than 10, with our decision to enter the world of medicine. Right? The average PA now might spend 4 years in undergrad, 2 years in graduate school with maybe a gap year in between. Back in my day, it was 4 years of undergrad, 3 years of graduate school. A pharmacist might spend 4 years in undergrad, 4 years in graduate school, and then even potentially pursue up to 2 years of residency training. An NP, you see the trajectory, might spend many years in school or reduce work hours while they're in a nurse practitioner program. The list goes on. My point is that we took a long time to get to the six-figure income. And as a result, we didn't have any money to invest along the way, right? I don't know about you, but I was never able to pull off more than 5 hours of work a week during grad school. I made good money in undergrad, but in grad school, I had almost no income whatsoever. And so my ability to invest was almost zero. For just a second, engage in this little mental exercise with me. Let's pretend that you did not go to grad school, didn't even go to undergrad. You elected for something different, like maybe you became an electrician or pursued a different trade. We'll assume that you started working at age 18 and that you're going to consistently invest 10% of a $55,000 a year salary. Now, if you just do that from 18 to 25, you have over $50,000 invested. Not too shabby when we're comparing to the new PA, for example, who is 25 with a very negative net worth, at least mine was, and zero assets, right? So you're ahead of the game. But more importantly, that, $53,000 invested by age 25, that does a lot for future wealth. Because without doing anything else, that turns into $1.15 million for retirement assets. This is not because they invested more or a crazy amount or had this really high savings rate. It is the simple fact that they started earlier. Now, as a new PA, if you wanted to have twinning investment accounts with this made-up person, right, who didn't go to undergrad or grad school, by age 40, you would actually have to invest double per month what they did starting at age 25 to achieve the same result. Now, of course, you should be able to invest more on an annual basis because your income is higher after graduate school. However, we also know the reality of the student loan payment to contend with, and sometimes it doesn't feel as easy as it sounds. This is the opportunity cost of delay, but this only looks at the missed years while you were in training. It doesn't even count those years after graduation where you're the one giving those same reasons, right? Of I'm busy, I work a lot of hours. I need to buy a house. I want to replace the car. I have a wedding. I have a kiddo. All of those things, those stack more years of delay onto the back end of you already being behind. This is the most insidious money problem that medical professionals have. If you polled a room of medical professionals and said, what's your number one money problem? I guarantee you 8 out of 10 hands would say student loan debt. But this is the real number one. You just might not be aware that it's happening. Let's look at a simple example of the benefit of starting early, or I guess through another lens, the penalty for waiting. We'll assume you invest $1,000 a month. You start at 30 and you earn an average annual rate of return of 8%. Very easy math. If you did that by age 65, you would have about $2.2 million. Now, is that enough? That's a whole nother conversation, right? General rule of thumb for a standard retiree, meaning someone who retires from full-time work, mid to late 60s, you can estimate that $1 million invested will generate $40,000 a year for them to live off of. So this $2.2 million nest egg will generate just over $80,000 a year. You might be thinking that that's pretty good, but if you're 25, I might remind you that things will cost a lot more in 40 years than they do right now. Just ask your grandparents if you don't believe me. So again, we'll do a whole separate video on how to figure out what number you need to be shooting for to know, is it enough? But for this example, let's just look at the benefit of getting rolling now. $1,000 a month, starting at age 30, is going to generate $2.2 million. Let's change one single variable and let's start at 40. What happens to that big, beautiful number at the end of the road? You now have $940,000, which we just discussed translates to less than $40,000 a year to live off of. I think that's a big yikes, because $40,000 a year to live off of, even in today's dollars, is going to be a huge lifestyle cut for what most PAs, NPs, pharmacists would be used to, and that completely ignores inflation. Remember, this 10-year delay cost you $1 million. It's not because you're not intelligent. It's not because you weren't working hard the entire 10 years. It's not even because you didn't have a great income. It's because the magic of wealth building is compounding returns plus time. And because you waited to start, you missed out on half of the equation. I learned this lesson in the most practical and brutal way in my 20s. I decided to pay off my student loans on this super accelerated cadence. I paid off $161,000 in 16 months. We can talk about that another day, how that was pulled off. But regardless, I invested $0 for that 16 months. And as a result, we spent multiple years of very powerful investing time, right, in our 20s, when money was going to really compound and earn for us over 4 decades. We took those years out of the equation. We actually lost millions of dollars with that decision, and I did not save millions of dollars in student loan interest. Spoiler alert. Do I regret it? No. But I now recognize the opportunity cost that exists in every decision to delay investing, whether that's because you have a big life thing that comes up or because this is one of those tasks that even though you know it's important, it never feels urgent and you never get around to it. Medicine creates this weird, kind of dangerous psychological trap. Because we delay for so long and we sacrifice for so long while we're in school or training with long hours and having really no money or the ability to do a lot of the stuff that our friends are doing, we have this feeling when we finally finish of like, I'm going for it, right? I'm buying the car, I'm buying the house, like who really cares about the rest? I'll figure it out later. But I guarantee you, this creates a later where you have to invest thousands of dollars more a month to make your basic retirement work, which means that when your life gets more expensive, which 1,000% it will, and you go from having minimal streamlined bills and taking care of yourself to having 4 kids and 2 dogs and one of your dogs has diabetes and the list goes on, right? Things get expensive. And what you did is you took your future self, who's going to have a lot of responsibility already, and you added financial burden to him or her. That's like robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? And it's something that none of us really want to think about, but that's the reality of what we're doing. We run through these numbers with folks all the time of what does it look like for you to have an inflation-adjusted standard retirement based on what you're earning, what life looks like, and your time horizon from now until you would start living off of assets. What does it actually look like, excluding Social Security, for you to just maintain your life? And then we'll project out, okay, based on that number, where are you going to land? Are you going to be on track, above the goal, below the goal? And it turns out that a lot of medical professionals, based on what they're doing now, are actually millions of dollars short. But that's not really the concerning part. What concerns me is the reaction to that. It's a lot of, oh yeah, I know. I knew it was going to be bad. Yeah, I had a feeling I was off track, but there's no, let's fix it. There's no urgency to recognizing like, this is a huge problem. And if you decide to delay fixing it, all you're doing is making your future life harder. Now, I don't know about you, but I prefer future life easier, right? And I have lived that. I used to work a lot of hours clinically. Now I don't. My life is busier now. I have 2 kids, but I don't have to put in those hours because I put in the work on the front end. So I get the joy of saying, hey, I get prolonged periods of time off with my kids. If I had made the inverse decision and I had said, I'll figure it out later, I'm just going to kind of live life in the moment in my 20s and just see how it all goes, I would be in the opposite situation now, where I would be torn between working extra shifts that I didn't want to work and taking time away from my kids because I needed to play catch up. So when you're making the decision on like, how big of a deal is this? Why don't you look into the future, ask your decade older self just how important it is for them, and then make your call. We talk a lot about financial independence and creating a situation where work is optional. And it sounds really aspirational, but the truth is we all achieve financial independence. Some of us do it when we're 77, some of us do it when we're 47, but we all have to get there because you likely will not or won't be able to work until you drop dead. Figuring that out is just math. But the reality is the math looks a lot less favorable the more you compress your time horizon to get the job done. So if you have any aspirations to do anything other than work full time from now until the day you're mid to late 60s, please take this seriously. Take time this week to start building your investing systems and make progress in this arena. If you need help, I have a free 22-page guide to building your money systems and factoring in debt. I will put the link below. Make sure you get that. Start checking off boxes today so that your math looks better tomorrow.